crazy.
Okay, we're good.
We have it going?
We're going.
Okay. We're back on the record. I've been advised that the live streaming is active. I think we left off yesterday that you guys had at least one more proposal that you wanted to make, but you didn't want to have time constraints on making it and discussing it yesterday. So if you want to go ahead.
Well, the first part, I wanted to apologize to you. I was going to interrupt you at one point, but I never got to answer the question.
Oh, okay.
And so that it goes back to that pay thing where we're talking. He asked a question about the upper halves of the comparison departments, and I think that without having those, that the basis of our the reason why we use the starting pays of the departments is that after those people are promoted, usually a promotion entails a pay raise. And so although lieutenants, captains, majors, and even the chief are not in our bargaining pool, they are underpaid, are not to market as well. And so that's where just the basis from where we started, that's where it was coming from.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I apologize.
Thank you.
Should we have the adapter for using the screen, or if not, I can just hand you. I have.
Well, we'll need handouts, but then this way it's live stream. But technology hates me this morning. We move to a bigger room and you bring less people.
They got told to stay to work.
Well, we do to people on the streets, I guess.
It's a little early too.
It's not even cooler.
I know.
No, it's really hot.
It was when we got here, but it's warmed up.
And then I'm going to get the handouts.
Do you have Lynn turn the heat off?
Oh, you want me to?
No, I'll have it done.
Yeah, it was fine. Did you text him?
I texted Shauna. I don't have Lynn's either.
Get back to school again. Take one and pass it back.
That's right.
Enable that. It's easy.
And I.
Because of all those cameras.
Did you give Andrew one yet? I'll give Andrew one and then we'll just split.
Thanks more so.
Who brought this to me?
We're all sharing.
No, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, you two are sharing.
Take a sip and pass it
No, it's all yours.
Okay, well, we'll go coffee first and then. Thanks, Roger.
You're welcome.
Now, is this an educational or is this a proposal?
It's a combination.
Oh,
It is both. So just wanted to talk about the non-sworn side of the police department and some of the challenges and such that we face on that aspect of policing. The non-sworn jobs are integral to policing and to the police department. They face challenges that you don't see on general city employee jobs with added stresses. What I have here is some quotes from some studies that have looked at this issue, similarities between non-sworn and sworn positions. Read you this quote. When looking at the similarities between civilians working in law enforcement and sworn officers, McCarty and Scogan and Scott found the burnout process is universal, with nearly the same factors affecting civilians as those affecting sworn officers. This comes into play with our turnover rate. This comes into play with just the stresses that you take home, and just the general employee health. Pertaining to civilians in particular, I thought this was a pretty good paragraph, and I have I have these handouts for you as well to look at if you want. It says, we also need to recognize what our civilian employees encounter. Consider who are the individuals in our department who receive the emergency calls and dispatch police officers to critical incidents. Who are the employees who are dealing with angry citizens who want their impounded property back? Who are the members in this department who are racing against time to identify a DNA profile to help investigators identify serial rapists? Who is photographing and collecting the evidence from horrific crime scenes? Who is dealing with difficult customers wanting access to their police arrest records? These questions are just a sampling of the types of questions we need to ask ourselves to help us recognize the staff that supports much of our daily activities as police officers and help serve our communities. I think this is an aspect that is overlooked. We have non-sworn that are out on scene with sworn. In horrific instances, we have staff that on a daily basis, one of their primary job duties is to type these reports. You have a pool of 6 individuals that type up every report, and they know they're not typing a novel. They know that these are real life circumstances. We have another 2 non-sworn personnel who have to read every report and every supplement. And the weight of that over time can be significant. And it is a different job than just a data entry job. Regarding burnout, and again, this refers back, this is the McCarty-Skilligan report, and I'll provide you a copy with that. The study found that the burnout process is a universal one, driven by virtually the same factors among both civilians and sworn officers. Sworn officers, and this one is key, because I think this is where a lot of some anguish comes into play. Sworn officers may be treated like members of the organization, while civilians may be treated like employees of the organization. And this is why we have the first part of the proposal that we spoke of. So it says, in recognition that any non-sworn position held within a law enforcement agency makes it uniquely different from serving in a general civilian role within the city, and that they are recognized as part of the bargaining unit of the police union, the non-sworn members shall be distinct and differentiated from the general city employees in the pay chart and job descriptions. And part 2 of that is that as recognized members of the bargaining unit, all non-sworn members are also subject to the Pocatello Police Department personnel administration rules. I did print it. Okay, I will have to print that. I thought I had it. It was left in my office. Regarding the PAR, on the very first page, and the PAR is the personnel administration rules. Very first page, number 1, these rules shall apply to all positions within the police department. And so I'm not sure where the misunderstanding came that the non-sworn did not fall under that grouping. The other, when you look at the matrix within the PAR, it also lists dispatch records, code enforcement, licensing, and every non-sworn position. So to me, it's a mystery. I sat in on the development of the PAR, so I'm not sure how that understanding that we were not part of that came across. So that is something that I would like to have in the CBA as a recognized part of the bargaining unit fully. So hiring challenges. Non-sworn, we come across some of the same difficulties that we see on the sworn side. Currently we have 2 vacancies in dispatch with another vacancy coming up here in the next couple of weeks when we have a retirement. On support specialist side, we have 2 vacancies with a 3rd coming in December with another retirement, or in August, sorry. And then in December, we also have another retirement of our community services rep. Our hiring process is similar to sworn. We go through an extensive background check. Our detectives can speak to the fact that they go through the same process in doing a background check for a non-sworn position as they do for a sworn position. The non-sworn personnel have to undergo CVSA or polygraph. We have to undergo drug screening. This all basically holds us to a higher standard in hiring. We're also held to a higher standard than in order to maintain our jobs in law enforcement. This hiring process is not quick, it's not easy, and we are looking at a time frame of 4 to 6 months to fill these positions. So any vacancy is a hardship. And when we lose people in dispatch, we have retirement, and then we have someone who left for a better job, for a better opportunity for them. But that's a lot of experience that's walked out the door. One of our upcoming retirements out of our support specialists is interesting in that we've had several folks move from over the years, move from dispatch into support into a support role. But I've had comments made that if they hadn't realized how stressful being a support specialist was, they would have just stayed in dispatch with the higher pay. So there's a lot involved in the job, no matter what division you happen to work in.
And it's crucial what they handle, right? I mean, they're handling information that not anybody can get. And so I think that's one of the things that when you talk about the background checks and the polygraph, I mean, the person that is controlling the evidence or controlling, even something as small as social security numbers, right? I mean, those are vital things, and so it's really important to take that in consideration with what they handle.
And I think there has to be an understanding that the non-sworn members, we are part of the law enforcement agency. We are part of policing. And it is something that everybody takes very seriously. It is something that is necessary to the smooth running of a department. It is crucial in the court processes. You have several of us on the non-sworn side testifying in court on a regular basis. It is just a very crucial aspect that needs to be recognized as part of the whole. So, coming to the next aspect. And I think you will see the theme in our proposals this year as a bargaining unit is our goal is to be at market. And that is whether it is a sworn member, whether that is a non-sworn member. The bargaining unit as a whole has a goal of paying their members at market. So to that effect, and thank you very much, Heather, for the facts that you presented. The hybrid, and one thing I do want to make clear is that the non-sworn is, we understand we have the BDPA, thank you. That they went through a process to evaluate positions and place them in a ranking. And I'm very appreciative of that process, and that is not an issue. What we are discussing is simply the maintaining the market, current market value for the positions. So BDPA built it in 2014. They adjusted it in fiscal year 2017 for 1.9%, which took care of your 2015 and 2016 market adjustments. The market adjustments for FY 17, 18, and 19 have not been taken into account. I also have on there the matrix that shows you where the non-sworn are in grade. At this point, we have 28 people below market, saying that they're between step 1 through 5. We have 1 person at their market and 18 people above the market. What we are proposing is that it's a 6.1% increase to bring us to the market. This will bring into, that will bring us up, pretty much up to date, bringing into effect the 2016, 17, 18 CPIs. We would also propose the one-step advancements along the matrix. This would bring us to 24 people below market, 6 at market, and then 17 above market. And then that would be a true market adjustment.
Okay, quick question, and maybe I missed this. So if you got the 6.1 increase, is that across the board to everybody? So the people that are above market go above market more, or is it?
Well, no, and in
You know
fact.
what I'm saying? If we have this many above market, are they getting the 6.1, or are we just trying to get the people that are not to market, and then those people are just working the step?
And this is why I'm saying that we're not arguing the hybrid matrix that was developed by BDPA. We're staying with that same formulation and just bringing in the market adjustments that should have been built into it over the last, really from the time it was implemented. Again, like I said, the goal of the bargaining unit is simply to get all members to market, and that's the basis of this proposal. And so I did include the proposed, what the chart would be for the sworn, or for the non-sworn personnel.
It looks like, I haven't looked at these numbers, but it looks like in the proposal, it puts 5 more people at market. It actually takes 1 person out of being above market, and then it you know, it takes, so it's just trying to make it closer, not totally give everybody.
Currently, we do have
Just-
1 person that's off the scale. And so their pay has been frozen since the implementation of the matrix. By adjusting the scale to current market, that actually brings them back onto the hybrid matrix. So,
But just with respect to the chief's question, the way I see the proposed police hybrid pay chart, you're doing a 6.1% in each cell.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
And
the
that's
people
takes-
that are above market then are going to go more above market because you're giving them the same amount.
Well, keeping in mind, when you look at the number, and I guess that's a very important thing to point out, is that on this chart, that is market from a couple years ago. So at that time, there's actually significantly more people below market because they had not taken the adjustments. So at that point, they were 3 years behind on where they should have been. So that's the numbers on the current scale. But if you were to put that in true numbers with what they're making currently, then we would have a lot more people under market.
And have you done that analysis?
I haven't, but good for you.
Okay, but so you're I'm just saying you're guessing on that because you haven't done
No,
that
I'm
analysis.
not guessing on that. Because if you take someone who is, the city itself has admitted that they have not taken CPI and adjusted the scale. This is not an argument that I have made.
Well,
I am making
I'm
that
not saying,
scale,
I'm just
but
trying to
it's not-
understand.
Yeah, and I'm sure Heather can clarify this as well, because this is essentially the same argument that they've made to council as to why they need to maintain their employees at market. And we understand that this is something that's faced across the entire city as a problem that they don't tend to stay at market. And for those of us that have worked for the city for any length of time, and we know we've gone through, I've been here over 20 years, and this is the third, when they did this matrix, it was the third time that they had to do a large scale adjustment to keep employees somewhere close to market. So our concern has always been that they make the adjustments, but then they don't progress maintaining market value for their employees.
Okay. Any questions?
We
He's
just
very
really want
familiar with
to,
these numbers.
say we just really want to drive home to our civilian employees, they're not seen a lot, but they work very hard behind the scenes, and it's a very different job than what they're compared to in terms of the grouping. Like, data entry or a water bill collector is going to be very different from that job over there, especially with the things that Mary pointed out with the time it takes to get hired and the hiring requirements.
And one thing we did touch upon with the sworn was the changing nature of the calls and the increased number of welfare checks that were going on and dealing with people that are in crisis. Our folks that are out on the street on the non-sworn side are interacting with these people as well. Parking attendants, code enforcement officers, licensing personnel. And so they're facing the same increased dangers as sworn. And I'm not saying it's not to the same degree, but their interaction with the public is still significant. And that is a concern with increasing problems just in society and the lack of respect that we're seeing within law enforcement. One thing I will point out is that when, as a non-sworn, and I've held several positions where I've been an animal control officer, where I've been a code enforcement officer, where I've been out in the public, they don't see a code enforcement officer. They see someone from the police department. When animal control officer, they don't see an animal control officer. They see someone that can still take them to court. And so those dangers are there when you're interacting with the public in any kind of enforcement manner.
Okay, appreciate that. Any further proposals from?
Move it this time.
So is this one number 6 or number 8?
Should be number 8.
Okay. Because in going through mine, did we have a 6 yesterday?
6 is our pay.
Okay.
And the simplified version is what Heather printed off yesterday.
So you want to present?
Sure. Can I have, sorry. Share it back and forth. The budget doesn't extend to 2 quarters. So this is city proposal number 1. This is just a clarification on what the current practice is for VIVA prorates. If you join as a bargaining unit member after October 1st, if your hire date is after October 1st, your VIVA is prorated for your lump sum in January. This is just clarification of that already in place process. So basically just documenting the process so that there's no confusion as to how that is handled. The only other piece that we added, that is if you move from bargaining unit member to a general employee, you don't get additional VIVA. It's amazing how these problems pop up, as you go through the year. So the changed language is the yellow italic. The CBA language is currently listed below. And if there's a red strikeout, that's what I've removed.
Should that say any bargaining unit member?
Like,
Where it says any bargaining union member?
probably.
Yeah, it should be unit. I agree.
questions on this?
You just prorate it off of the however many weeks or whatever, 1,300.
It's already what we do. It's just making sure that the process is understood. You don't just want to have information in one person's brain. Usually doesn't go real well.
And then the last part, the wellness fee, but can only occur for a member once fiscal year regardless of department employment.
Yeah, you can only get when you submit, you can't get it in police, and then if you move to general, you can't get it there as well.
There's some confusion in the last year of when that payment is made. Do we need to correct that?
Which payment?
To the lump sum to the.
It's in the second
bargaining
payroll of
unit?
January.
Do we have that in here?
Yeah, it's section 2, first line.
Thanks.
It's early.
Yeah.
I guess it's right there in section 2, there's also a small typo, just payroll of the January. I guess that should just be payroll of January. That first line of section 2. Unless they meant to say more, like.
It's just the same as it was the previous year. Just correct that as a typographical change.
Any other questions or typos?
Should we move to the next one?
I'm actually going to skip to our proposal number 3.
I have one quick question. If somebody's hired after January, so like.
It's still
February,
prorated.
They'll still prorate it and they still get a lump sum like their first check or
Is
second
that
check?
what it is?
I'm not sure on the processing of that. I would think it would be their first
So
check.
they don't miss it, right?
No. Yeah, I know for fire, we do it with like their first or second paycheck, so I'm sure it's probably the same type.
They have to go through open enrollment,
Right.
so it depends on when they would go through that.
Okay.
That's within 30 days of hiring, right?
Yeah, so usually we get all that information.
Yeah,
and-
because I know there's a lot of like stuff that's time constraints. So if he had hired, I didn't know if he just missed out just because he had to wait till next year.
And we do go off of the hire date, so.
So this is city proposal number 3. This is making a change to the Percy match forms that sworn officers complete every year. Currently, you have to complete that form every open enrollment period. This would just eliminate the need to complete the form every year. What you allotted in calendar year 2018 would remain in effect until you decided to change it during an open enrollment period. It just eliminates the need for you to come in and sign up every year. It just keeps it at that level until you make a change.
And you can only change it during open enrollment.
Well, all I'm talking about is the continuation of the form.
Rather than being under the necessity.
Yeah, then
of
every
doing it
year.
Each year, yeah.
Or if there's a change of circumstances during the year that necessitates, then you'll have to come in and change
Right,
the
a
form.
qualifying event, but
Yeah.
just as to.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the
Just
form.
cuts down the need to
with-
come in and just, there's no changes, then everything's
It's just
fine.
I get, 93 police officers that come in and grumble every year that they have to fill out the form, so.
They're not changing anything.
forgot.
Yeah, those people are really unhappy. Any questions on this one? This is city proposal number 2. While I appreciate Mary not understanding why civilian discipline does not fall under the PAR, it's very clear in the CBA, which supersedes the PAR. So it's listed in Article 1 and Article 18, Section 2. It's the language that's struck in red in front of you. What I have done is I've moved civilian discipline over under police department authority, but any discipline or investigations that are rendered regarding discriminatory harassment, ADA, or EEO, they would all be a joint venture between the police department and human resources, with all source documents being housed in human resources. The reason is I'm the one who gets to deal with the Idaho Human Rights Commission on these matters, so it needs to be housed in a singular point, and that's HR.
Is that the same for us too?
Yep. We're already involved in those. This just clarifies it in the contract how those will be handled.
But other than these exceptions, non-sworn would be handled from a disciplinary standpoint the same way that sworn is.
Yes.
So all those you have marked in number 6 are all the Title IX stuff, correct?
Well, they're all followed under
Followed
the,
under that, so-
the discriminatory harassment section of the handbook. ADA, HR handles ADA that's internal. External ADA accommodations are handled by our transit director, but anything that involving an employee would be internal, so.
Any questions? At this point, that's our original proposals. We've not yet prepared anything in counter to your proposals. We've had the opportunity since we adjourned yesterday to have a lot of internal talk concerning your proposals and especially the salary proposal and what we consider to be kind of a philosophical change to the global perspective of the department and what the department as a whole provides, both from salary standpoints, training standpoints, equipment standpoints, incentive standpoints, and everything that goes along in what is the totality of your job. And we're hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're hearing that really the focus is turning the department into a how much is paid per hour perspective is kind of the primary perspective of how the department should be managed and run and what it should look like. And that's really a fundamental change from I know the chief and all the management standpoint of how that department has been handled over the years, because as the chief, it is clear to tell you that there's more to the job than just what you make per hour. But if what you make per hour is the most important thing, the constraints we're under is, in all instances, is money. And I'm going to have Heather in a minute kind of lay out what the money issue is for this year from the city perspective. Now, in rough numbers, in comparing from last year's revenue to the anticipated revenue for this year for the city, and taking that to the maximum levy point, the city's going to generate, when it hits its maximum levy, about 1.7, a little bit more, $1 million of new money. Now, that has to then pay for, if you will, all additional expenses of the city for this year. Now, going to the maximum levy rate is also very dangerous, because if you go to the maximum levy rate in any one year, and if your market valuation goes down, then you're actually going to get less money than you did the year before. And to have any significant increase from one year to another, your market value evaluation has to change substantially. So you know you're going to have some additional expenses that just happen from year to year. Health insurance increases is an example for everybody. Everybody knows those are going to go up from year to year. So prudent management practices for the city council are always require that you step back from the maximum levy in any one year in order to keep some buffer. So in the event there is no valuation increase or a valuation decrease, that you can still meet certain obligations without having to do major and substantial cuts from the very beginning. So even though there's a possibility of going to 1.7 or a little bit over 1.7 million, we don't think that the council will ever do that, just because it's not a prudent thing to do. So that number is not a solid number for purposes of calculating then how much money is available for to meet all of the demands by every department in the city. So if Heather, if you want to go through.
Can we quickly answer something?
Sure.
So I don't think we're asking to change a management philosophy or anything like that. We're simply asking for what has been told is going to come year after year for the last 3 years. And we're not asking to change anything, but we're trying to show the importance to our membership of that pay rate adjustment that has been told is coming. They've been taking home less money over the last few years, and we as union leadership have told our members, the city has told us this. And so we expected over this last year especially that the city would be taking steps to budget and forecast so they could follow through with what they told us would occur.
In other words, that's the sore spot. That's the greatest efficiency, and so that's what's causing most of this.
I absolutely understand that your intent wasn't with making that proposal as I represented it. But what I'm saying to you is because of the financial constraints, the practical effect of your proposal is how I represented it. Because the only way to, and we'll agree with you that the cost of your proposal is north of $700,000. It's difficult to get a precise number because of the effect that increase has on overtime and trying to estimate what that is and the complexities of going that. But at a minimum, we know it's going to be at least $700,000 cost. The actual cost is going to be greater than that and has to be considered within the police department's budget. Okay, so if you look at that as a minimum of $700,000, we know it's probably going to be greater than that from a cost standpoint to the city. And if you're looking at a soft 1.7 million as available cash, that takes out and leaves $1 million then for all other aspects of increased costs and expenses to the city that are natural, that Heather will go through and explain to you. That then the only way to raise additional monies to meet that 700 or backfill the other department's needs is to really look at every aspect of the police department and to determine whether or not staffing levels are where they should be, which means should there be less people so that it can be higher pay rate for those that remain? Should there be incentive programs? Should there be certain units? And it really takes, and we've had a very heated and I think productive discussion this morning of really if the focus is going to be on salary only in many respects to get to what you want to be market, and now's not the time to talk about what market is or isn't, but there's substantial money that you want. The practical effect is really almost a reorganization of the police department in order to see what can be done within the financial constraints of the city.
That might not be a bad idea.
So it's not a difficult thing it's a very difficult thing to just merely respond, because you claim that there's 8 positions that are unfilled. Those may remain unfilled. There may be situations where the concept of a corporal disappears. There may be situations where you don't need the SWAT team anymore. There may be situations that maybe you don't need as many dog teams as you have now. Obviously, the non.
Right now, you're talking about cutting away the rank and file. What about the administration?
Well, I'm saying that too. That you have to look at all administration from top to bottom.
And then you need to look at the retroactive effects of that.
That's right, and you have to look at the sworn. Now, if you don't replace certain people, then you're not going to have the hours to do the internal training. So you're probably not going to have nearly as much training as you've had in the past. So it's the synergies of trying to figure out how we backfill the money that you want will, from a practical standpoint, create fundamental changes in the department as a whole. And we're talking about how to kind of go through each aspect of the department. And when we say each aspect, we mean each aspect, and looking and saying, prioritizing initially, my thought, and I don't know whether this is the proper way to go about it, is this can't be changed because of the safety aspects or whatever, for whatever reason it can't be changed. And so we set those aside, and now everything that's left, you strip down to its bare minimum and cost it out and see what it does to everything else, and then see where we're at.
Well, I mean, to some extent, all of that is pretty speculative at this point, because it's not like we have any concrete rendering of exactly what the changes are going to be, or even what the change, even concrete 30,000 foot level of, well,
I have
these are the
much
things
closer
that it
than
would.
30,000 foot level.
Okay, well, that's fine. But the situation right now is untenable. And that's a reality that people on both sides of the table need to appreciate, because right now this department serves as the farm league for the rest of Idaho.
So right now, we have $1.7 million to hit our levy max.
Does that include the North Yellowstone tip?
That's at our levy max. So we
But it accounts for
We
the
don't have
TIF
those
expires.
numbers yet.
Yeah, we can't calculate
So it
them because
doesn't
we don't
account
have
for the
them.
TIF. Okay.
The 2.5% with the 1% step that includes your police civilians that was presented to council for the budget build comes in $441,000 in the general fund. City general fund benefits, including.
Now that deals with what, 353 employees.
City general fund benefits, that includes your sworn officers. The increase is the $204,000. Fire benefits are going up $107,000. Per se general increase for all general fund employees is $111,000. That's $865,000 out of $1.7 million that we've already expended or are planning to expend. New positions requested at $647,000. Part of those are police department requests. As you recall, last year, I believe you guys got 5 positions. That brings us to $1.5 million out of a $1.7 million levy limit. What we haven't talked about is police salary, fire salary, workers' compensation increase, operational expenditures, and interfund increase costs.
So I think back to the last few years where there hasn't been anything, and next year, right? Why are we in this situation where we knew this was coming, right? If we're doing all these budget processes and, you know, projections and things like that, if the city has chosen to remain flat on market increases or COLAs, why do we still not have that money available to take that jump that we've been talking about doing for the last few years?
Marketed, so the CPI that goes up, we take CPI in October, just in case you want to go look it up. It's a riveting reading. We take it as of October, which is our fiscal year start date. Our budget does not go up by CPI just because the government index shows that costs have gone up by CPI. We don't get a levy increase at CPI just because that happens.
And the valuations across Pocatello have been pretty flat from what we've seen. And so it doesn't give us a lot more room every year to be able to take more money. We've tried, over the last 3 or 4 years, we took zoo out of the general fund to try to give, that a little bit of a buffer. Last year we moved the capital money into a separate fund to try to give a little bit more room in the general fund. So I think, we've done everything that we can think of to try to get only the necessary items in the general fund. So that 1.7, it might go up to, based on the North Yellowstone, it probably will. We don't have numbers at this time. So we're just going off of kind of what we have and just based on a static market.
The other thing is the new positions, we do not anticipate the council will fund as many as they did last year, but we did put it in because we don't know until the departments individually request those in their budget meetings.
Sure. So to clarify, we're 6 officers short. We anticipate 2 more.
I was just looking at the 8 that you talked about.
And those 2, could go any day when they get their offers from where they're trying to go. The 6, based off of the numbers that we presented yesterday, is $528,000 to replace them and train them and get them on the street. There's also a cost associated with, those 30-some weeks before
Right,
they're
that's pure wages. It doesn't account for the administrative cost of bringing somebody up to speed and the time that staff and everybody else has to spend then on a new person that they wouldn't need to if the other person hadn't left.
We know every year money goes back to the city on employee costs from savings that we've done, whether it's savings in overtime budget or payroll. We give back $500,000, $700,000 every year. So at what point does that come back on the people that are carrying that workload? It doesn't. It keeps people leaving rather than keeping them inside our department.
Can you explain to me how the money is given back?
So
I understand what
basically,
you're talking about.
their expenses are less than what we budget for. So we expect usually their revenue to cover their expenses, or at least for the general fund as a whole. So when they come in under, that money just gets put into the reserves, which we're now we finally met our reserve limit. We do have additional reserves. So what that will do this year is the potential to use some of those for one-time needs, but we can't let it be used for operating because it's one-time money. We're not guaranteed to get it back.
If you were to use that one-time money to make some pay adjustments and adjust budgets for those new adjustments, is that possible?
No, what she's saying is that they can't put it into anything that's going to be on an ongoing basis, like maybe to
One chunk, that's all we
Right.
got.
Yeah,
It doesn't exist.
But once you make that adjustment and you budget for the new
right.
market.
It doesn't expand the budget. You just have that, so it's like you find $100 in your jeans when you're washing them. Woohoo, you don't get $100 every time you get your jeans out. It's just that one time. So next year we won't have that reserves to push towards the salary.
And if we did use it for that and built it into the budget, you'd still be pushing that levy limit. And that's where
So it'd be better to spend it rather than give it back.
You can't spend personnel costs on anything other than personnel as adopted.
Exactly.
But you can't spend it on
Overtime.
Well, but you're
operating
not
costs.
just going to run overtime to spend money. You run overtime for department need.
You'd stop the directed time off, and then you would compensate your employees for it.
And you think that's going to cover the span of 6 missing employees?
It would help.
That doesn't help your civilians that we just sat through a presentation on.
It helps the employees feel valued and not overworked and not led to believe these promises were going to occur.
And we understand you guys are behind market. Everyone's behind market. And we talk about market a lot, but it's this nebulous number. It comes down to what the budget can handle. When I went and presented, I presented 3 years of CPI. Council was very firm on the 2.5 build. That doesn't guarantee we're getting 2.5 in a step. That's just what's being built on. At the end of the day, when police and fire come in with their requests, that's going to affect, and it's going to come out of general fund employees, regular employees. That's who's going to balance the budget.
Do you really believe that there is a risk
Yes.
for people leaving?
Well, but there is in every position. You guys are looking at it from a singular
I understand,
viewpoint. But yes, I've
do you
acknowledged
believe-
that. I've also listened to you all morning talk about, no offense, we don't value civilians. We don't acknowledge how hard it is. We have never said it on this side of the table. We fully acknowledge they are active members of the law enforcement community. We have never said it, and I sat here all morning and listened to you talk about, we do a bunch of special stuff. We've never said you don't. But maybe there could be a little credit that we understand that you're different, but that doesn't mean, right now, I can show you the percentages. You presented the numbers, I used them. There's 353 employees on the hybrid pay scale. 47 of them are police. I put your one person at market that's considered with over because they're at market. 18% of general employees are above market. 40% of police civilians are. And that's because last year we gave you an additional step. So 60% of you are under, 82% are behind on the city side. So it's not just you that's hurting.
And we fully understand that. And this goes back to what we've said in the past, is that we are representing our members, and that is what we are here.
And I've never said that you can't.
I understand. And when we're talking about simple dollars and cents, I think you're also missing a fear, and it's the way Keela was touching on, is that going forward, we are looking at actual hemorrhaging of members to other agencies. And the long-term effect that will have on the city, the increased danger that it puts the personnel that are on the streets by having inexperienced officers, a greater majority of them, cutting training. That is a fear that's going to be compounded then in an effect on the city.
And don't disagree with you. People on the side of the table don't disagree with that, okay? But the issue comes down to if I think any government employer, and I think this city falls within that category, always wants to pay as much as they possibly can within the financial and tax constraints that this city has. Now, one of the problems that Pocatello has is that basically 40% of your what would otherwise be taxable property in this city, in a normal city, is not. Universities doesn't pay property taxes. And the churches don't pay property taxes and those type of things. So but they take up the infrastructure and they take up the services that are provided. So you got 40% of the city that is in many respects on a free ride, and the 60% of the city then is paying for everything. That's not that way in most cities. That's not that way in Idaho Falls. That's not that way in Twin Falls. It is a little bit because of College of Southern Idaho, but that's not nearly the campus size and the money and property values that deal with ISU. So Pocatello, in and of the infrastructure and the way this city is, the demographics of this city, is at a disadvantage financially from all the comparison points that you want to have. Now, if the value of the university was taxed the way everybody else is taxed, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about money. The money would be there. So there's so you have, when you're looking at comparisons, you got to look at the true comparisons that exist and the constraints that the city has from that standpoint. And the city bumps against its maximum levy all the time and is trying to do the best it can do. Now, with respect to the number that Heather just put up of the 441,000, that's a placeholder number. That's a number that is being used for purposes of building the budget, but that number isn't locked in stone. So what happens is in June, when all of the final numbers come in, if the city council is constrained because whatever agreement is reached and ratified by both sides for the two unions, the fire and the police, that becomes a non-negotiable item at that point in time. So that number is plugged in. And so if they have to balance the budget, where does the balance come from if you plug in $1.2 million for the unions out of a 1.5 available, then everything that was anticipated going to the general has to disappear and positions get cut. So there's realities on both sides, and I agree that you want to ask for as much as you can ask for, but there's some realities that we're dealing with here, folks.
What is the projection or the estimate of the Yellowstone TIF?
We're still waiting on the county to kind of get back to us. We should have it pretty soon, but we don't really have an amount. They're still working on it.
I mean, there has to be like a ballpark, right?
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure. I can see if I can find out and let you guys know.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that number is available, and we were just curious what that is.
Right, I mean, it has to have been appraised, right?
I'm not sure of I don't know how all that works where it was in
The
the
assessor
TIF.
has to have gone out and looked at it, even if they're still under the TIF.
Didn't they
I'll-
amend that TIF or take part of it out early?
So we took part of it out early.
Okay.
So what we thought was going to come in, it went down, and Joyce probably has those, so I can get those to you when we take a break.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do a
Because
caucus.
we could even pull up
Okay.
the county parcel viewer probably, and it would tell us the most recent assessment just by hovering the mouse over the parcels in the district. It should give us at least the appraised value, and we could get a ballpark number on that.
Yeah, I think that Joyce probably has some sort of an idea as soon as she's going to text me.
Do a caucus.
And Wamazawa is available.
And I'll go over and ask her.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, we
Oh, and now we're back on the record in case number.
Oh, oh,
There you go. Got it in your hand up.
So, okay. I said we're back on, right?
We are good.
Rolling. So, it seems like, if I understand you guys right, you don't have a concrete sort of counter proposal as to what we've put forth yesterday and this morning.
No, we don't. What the goal is to try to treat all city employees, general, fire, and police, as close to the same as we can.
Okay. And so
the placeholder amount of the 2.5% plus the step, and the steps are built into your salary schedule and the non-sworn. So we're really talking about the 2.5, and it's a 2.5 cost to the city. So if a base increase causes other increases to occur under the CBA, then the base increase needs to be reduced below the 2.5 so that the total cost is at 2.5 because the general employees don't have any of those
Okay.
incentive things.
All right, so why don't we
So
then-
that's the
Right.
goal, and I'm
No, I
guessing
understand that. So why don't we
that
conclude for
we're talking
today,
about 150.
And you guys can come back with an actual, until we're able to see an actual concrete counter proposal or hopefully an acceptance of the entire thing wholesale, right? But at any rate, because what we've heard today is that meeting what we've asked for is going to require, possibly and probably positions to be cut and things like that. And so that we have something concrete to take back to the body of the union, we'd like to see what positions those would be. So if you take into account the increase that we've requested, we'd actually like to see on paper or up here exactly what the city think that's going to mean as far as reduction, what positions you would eliminate to meet that demand, and how many and that sort of thing, so that we know what we're talking about when we go back to the body of the members as far as what the response is.
Let me ask this question. I get the feeling from your initial response is that, and I understand this goal is keep the department exactly the same way it is and pay us the 15%. There's nothing more that we would like to do, okay? But that's just not a feasible situation.
Okay, so what we need to see then is what is feasible.
Well, but what I'm
based on we've asked for.
asking is that are you willing to in earnest discuss significant philosophical changes within the department?
Well, in theory, yeah, but we just need to know exactly what that is. I mean, you're saying that, but you don't have a concrete, you got to eliminate this guy, we got to get rid of a canine, we got to get rid of this. And so that's what we want to see is, in theory, sure. That doesn't mean that any change would be great. If you're saying that this means major philosophical changes, fine, but we need to see a concrete look at what that really is, so that we can actually take that back to the body of the members and say, this is what they're proposing. In order to get the pay increase that you want, these are the things that would have to happen. Are you willing to do that in order to get your pay increase, or is there somewhere in the middle? But we need something concrete before we can have that conversation.
And I understand that, and I want to be absolutely clear so there's no misconception. We don't think that there can be enough changes made within the department to generate funds that even get close to the 15%.
Well, then, but
So-
why did we say that then?
Because
you led with it, to do that, we would have to make these philosophical
to even
changes.
take that into consideration, we have to, if it's going to go to how much are people making per hour, then we have to look at everything. But I want it to be absolutely clear that we don't think under any circumstances we're ever going to get to 15%, ever.
Well, there's think and we know because we did the math and we saw how many positions we would have to
And what I'm telling you
eliminate.
is based upon the expertise of the people that put the budgets together and have managed the department for a number of years,
Okay.
are sitting there saying, that's not possible. Can we cut things that will philosophically change the department? Yes. Do those cuts generate some cost savings? Yes. Are those cost savings going to be significant? It depends upon how you define significant. Are they going to be able to be between 3% and 5%? Available for that?
But let's do that then.
Maybe.
But let's go and look at it so that we can, so this is what I'm saying. You're saying in order to meet this 15% philosophical changes. Okay, well, let's go back and do the work then and do the math and say, okay, in order to hit 15%, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 have to go, right? And let's quantify what the price is on 1, 2, 3, 4 on each one of those, so that when we go back and we say, to get what you want, all this has to go. And then they can say, well, we can't have 3 and 5 gone. So let's add those back in. Okay, that's only an 11% increase. We can live with that, or whatever. But before we can say, oh, well, 15% doesn't work, I guess we have to negotiate ourselves and come down. That's not what we're going to do. We need to see what it is that won't work about the 15% so that we can put that in front of the body of the members, and they can say, okay, well, we can live without this much money so that we can still have this thing in the department. That's what we need.
You're saying this isn't possible, the 15%. What is possible? And that's what we're asking. What is possible?
Okay,
We're just at a point where without the counterproposal.
I understand that, but I guess that the other philosophical problem I have with the way you're phrasing it, okay, is that I don't think that we can create a menu of items and a cost savings for those items and then start talking about whether we do one of these and not the other. Because from the conversations I've had on this side of the table is that many of those items are so interrelated that you have to either do this package, and I don't know what that package is.
But that's what we do need to know, right?
Right, but it's not, but I don't want anybody to be confused that it's kind of like, okay, to make a 7.5% work, we got to cut 10 jobs. Here's the 10 jobs we're going to, well, we only want to cut 5. We only want to cut 5.
You can do that, right? Whether you feasibly can implement it is another question. You can put it all on paper, right?
We're not
You
going
can
to
say-
hand management rights over to the union.
I don't know.
And
That's
I
not
think
what we're
the point
talking
is
about.
that-
You guys are saying we have to philosophically change it in order to meet that demand. Great. What are the changes? And what is the quantifiable, which you can do, you can quantify the cost as to what that's going to mean. And so that we can look at that and say, okay, I mean, this is a negotiation. We're not saying that you're going to hand the reins completely over to the union and the union's just going to run the police department from here on out. Your response to our request for the increase is that it cannot be done without philosophically changing the department. Fine. What are those philosophical changes? I mean, you can do it. Even if it looks ridiculous, it's something you could never implement. To get to the math of 15%, if you say, okay, we have to cut half of the personnel to get that money back into the pot, to get to 15% or whatever it is, you can do it, and then you can move things over. I understand what you're saying, that there are certain things that would come as a package, and we understand that too, but there are other things that can be separated out on an a la carte basis if you had to do it. And so that's what we need to look at, is what is the price tag on each thing, so that we can take that back to the body of the union and they can say, okay, well, even though that is a super expensive thing, that's a priority, and so we need to have that in order to have a department that functions. And so we can see that on paper now, and so we can come down on that. But what we're not going to do is negotiate against ourselves and say, well, maybe only this percent or maybe only that percent before we've been presented with a concrete proposal that gives us something to make that decision on.
And I understand that. The time constraint that's going to be involved in doing that, I'm not sure we can meet next week as planned.
That's fine. And that was another thing that I was going to say is, I know that this is kind of how it's been done, but in reality, we should have provided our proposals to you guys in advance and vice versa, so that the first time we sat down, we had something real to talk about, other than just saying this is what we want and this is what we want. And so
But that's not how the open meeting laws require this.
Well, but not all of it has to be done via open meeting. We can sit down and finalize all the terms, but we can pass things back and forth. Sure we can. I've done it with the city before.
Not with me.
When we were doing the development agreement for Northgate.
This is a union
That's a different
negotiation. It's
situation.
specifically addressed in the Open Meeting Act. This
Okay.
is different.
What does the Open Meeting Act say?
Say that once negotiations are requested, all discussions, concerning negotiations have to occur in a duly noticed open meeting.
And we're at that point. I guess we're saying is that until we have a counter
Right, but
proposal,
we can still-
we're kind of at an impasse right
Look,
now.
I mean, you know as well as I do
Everything
that-
that's presented has to be.
Well, I understand that, but-
across the open table.
But you know as well as I do that, I mean, with any kind of case that you have, you can caucus and negotiate and get together your terms, and then you go in, you put it on the record. And-
Not under the Idaho Open Meeting Act.
Right, I understand that, but we can still substantively keep everything on the record. It's not like the emails that go back and forth won't still be subsequent to FOIA requests, or subject to FOIA requests.
That's not the issue. The issue is that the negotiations have to be transparent and occur in an open meeting. The concept of sidebars is now illegal. The concept of negotiating through email is illegal.
We can't send anything. No proposals, no nothing.
No, has to occur at this table in an open meeting.
Which brings us back to the first point, that until the city.
And I'm not disputing it.
And so, and
so,
I understand
but
that.
it has to be at this table.
Do you have that TIF number, Ashley?
Joyce is trying to get a hold of the county to try to see, she's trying to calculate it right now.
Okay.
To try to see what effect it has on the general fund. Because basically what you have to do is you'll get the total value that's going to come on to our valuation, and then you have to take what that means to the general fund. So she's working on it right now.
Okay. We just also want to just kind of point out some of these philosophical changes that are being talked about are, we feel, due to the inaction to prepare for this, to have pay increases. In terms of planning, forecasting, things like that, we feel that some of these changes, right, we're at that point because we haven't really said, okay, we said next year we need to come through with this. And we're
Brandon,
not ready for that.
in support of the people that are on this side of the table, okay? They work every year to do all the forecasting and everything that they can possibly do with the hope of maximizing the amount that can be used to increase pay for every employee in this city. And to sit there and say that at the end of every year, everybody is always hopeful that hopefully we can catch up more next year because we didn't have the money this year. And they're putting together everything they can always put together to create as much fund of money that's available within the financial constraints that the city has. Ashley talked about things they've moved out of general fund in order to create more money. Those are things that they're doing. Now, I don't know what kind of planning or thought process you don't think that these employees are doing that's to the detriment, but to sit there and accuse them of
Okay.
not being.
I didn't mean it as an accuse.
We don't
We're just
need to-
trying to look
It was
at the
an
root
accuse.
issue.
It was
If
an
it came
accuse.
off that way, I apologize. That's not my intent. The intent is to look back at what led to this, right? So we can create a situation where we don't get in this position again, where we are losing people, right? And we see the cost, and we see how detrimental that is to the rank and file, to the services that we provide to the city. And all we're trying to get with that comment, and I apologize if I offended anybody, that wasn't my intent. Sorry, Heather. If we can correct that so we don't get this far behind in the future and create a problem where people are leaving for higher paying jobs, where it's putting the stress on other officers, on our civilians to cover those other duties, right? Which is taking away services to our community.
Understandable, and we're not saying that. I think that this police department is a wonderful police department. I think every police officer I've ever met here are somebody that I have the utmost respect for, and I think everybody on this side of the table has that. We're doing our best to try to provide as much as we possibly can within the financial constraints that the city has to live in. And I think that the respect should, for these people, of the stress and pressure they're under to do that and take care of everybody, not just your membership, needs to be recognized as well.
And
I did talk to Viva last night, because you had the question if you could bounce, if you could change whether it was cash or sick leave. You can change that. It has to be on an annual basis, only during open enrollment periods. But it has to be year chunks at a time, and it has to be whole membership.
So the same as just changes to your coverage and things like that, where you get that open
Well, you would
enrollment
have
period
to,
every year.
you'd have to negotiate it every year.
Sure. Okay. Well, then as to the future meetings, I guess maybe we table that until you guys have a better idea of how the time it's going to take to put together those sort of more concrete.
You know, we'll cancel the notices, and then we can figure out when to notice. We just want to put this on the record. Ashley's had the opportunity to do an estimate of what the total cost of your 15% salary increase is, and it's just dollars short of $852,000.
Okay.
And so we just wanted to provide that to you. So that's, but I don't want anybody to be misconceived again that we're going to do an analysis of the department
Every person.
to try to trim $851,000 out of the department in order to meet the 15%. The reevaluation of the department is going to be tempered first and foremost by safety considerations and what is the minimum that needs to be done to meet the safety of the officers and the public. So there's certain things.
We can still quantify those things. Wait a minute, but that's what we need. You said
I understand,
fundamental
but
changes, and we need to know what the cost of the fundamental changes would be.
But you keep talking about...
No, I understand that, and we're not under any misunderstanding about the need for certain of these things, even though they can be quantified, that they still have to happen because of officer safety, that it's not practical to do away with them. We understand
But we
that that's
can't
going to be the
present
reality.
that. If it's not something that can in actuality happen, we cannot present it as a proposal.
We're not asking,
We're not targeting raising 15%. And I want everybody to be
No,
absolutely clear on
I understand that, but what you've said is fundamental changes have to happen, right?
To raise funds
So we need to
over and
quantify
above,
those, right.
over and above what the city has available this year for a salary increase.
Right. So then we need
And
to
we will
quantify
attempt to
those changes.
quantify how much could be raised and what would have to happen to raise those funds.
Right, within the department is what you're saying.
Yes.
I think what I want to clarify is that this idea of cutting positions did not come from this side of the table. We're responding to the proposal.
We're not saying it did. We're saying that the practical
Correct, but just to be
effect,
clear,
you have to look.
that was not any intention on this side of the table, and that was a consideration that you proposed, that would need to occur.
And you picked positions that we have.
And that's
Maybe throughout SWAT,
why we would like
I'm
clarity.
just throwing out stuff that I know and understand.
And part of that is, right, we've talked about where you're going to generate the money.
Right.
So this is what I'll tell you. I don't have a problem looking at it, right? And you can take it to the union and look at it, but you guys don't get to decide. There will never be a time that you go, we'll take that, but we won't take that without agreement. Ultimately, management is going to say, if you go, well, no, we can't do that, it's going to be on the management end to look at it and say what we keep and what we don't keep.
Sure.
So there are things, I'm not against looking at anything, I guess, and that's part of the discussion we had. 15%, I can't cut 15% out of my budget, and I can't get 15% out of getting rid of personnel or getting rid of teams, or I can't get there. There's no way I can get there. All right.
And we understand that.
So part of it is if you think that the department would be better off with a reorganization of some kind to save some money that we can put into wages, right? I'm not against looking at that. It's never pretty, because we have fought in the last 7 years to get more people on the street, right? To do those things. I told you guys this for 7 years. There's only 3 things I worry about. It's never changed. That you go home at night at the end of your shift, that you keep the city as safe as you can keep it, and that I can give you the training and equipment to make 1 and 2 happen. Never talked about wages, never talked about any of that, right? I want the best for you. I get it. Do we want it to be the highest paid department in the state? Yeah. But we only have little things to work with. So really, all I can do is, I can look at it and say, here's a reorganization, right? From top to bottom. Not just, I don't want to fill these positions, right? I got to have what I have on the street. To be quite honest with you, I fought for 2 extra guys. I got to get them hired and get them on the street, right? Doesn't hurt that end, but it has to go from somewhere else, which ultimately hurts, you know, somewhere in the department.
Right, but that's just what, we just want to see it, because, I mean, it's one thing to say, well, something's got to go. All right, fine, what? What are the things? Well, let's quantify the costs and talk about what it would look like to get to or approach that 15%.
Can't get there. I'm going to tell you that right now. I can't get there.
And to be honest,
can't get to 15% in my budget and personnel.
When you said that you did not have a counter proposal, that is when this meeting at this point should have stopped, because it was following that statement that they threw out the idea of reorganization and cutting positions. It should have stopped at the point that we are not ready to present a counter proposal, and let's break until we are ready to do that. Because this discussion was never intended.
The problem is, I mean, we're thankful for, I mean, we set, as a union, we set and backed wanting more people because it's not safe right now with the shortage. But the problem is, we're still short after asking for more people, and we believe that part of the reason that we are short is because that people that are living in Pocatello are working at Idaho Falls. There's guys that have just been hired. There are guys that have just been hired that went to post through academies with friends that are choosing to go work in Idaho Falls while they live in the city.
They work at the city of Idaho Falls?
Yes.
Or they work at the INL?
They work for the city of Idaho Falls Police Department.
From here?
Yeah, they live in Pocatello.
Oh, there are people from Pocatello,
Well, I'm
not
saying,
people.
there are people from Pocatello. So the idea.
I thought you meant from our people.
I'm talking about the application pool, right?
I was like, who?
Because the thing was, like, we pushed for the more people because it is not safe. It is not safe. I don't care. I work the street. It is not safe at some points in time because we're short-handed. People get sick. People get hurt. Whatever, right? And so the idea of us being the 6 people short or down is, it may cost us a lot of money to get a raise for the people that are here and to fill those positions. But the thing is, we're not able to fill those positions because they can go other places. The same skills can go other places and make more money. That's what this is about. We're not trying to insult you. And to be truly honest, I try to keep my mouth shut about the fact that you described our city as being we're just not set up that way because of the tax bracket or whatever. I don't know where you live, but I grew up here. And I wasn't born here, but I came to school here. I met my wife here. I work here, and I protect the city. So I appreciate what the city has brought to me. And for you to say, well, the city is just not set up that way, maybe that just because our tax base. Well, I'm not a member of the church. I did go to the school, so the school benefited me. I get that, and our tax base is not here, and I understand that that's where the money comes from. But the city to me is important. And the reason why it's important, I don't disregard the sanitation department, I don't disregard the water department, and I don't disregard HR even, right? I don't disregard anybody. I give them crap all the time that they're HR, but in my opinion, they're part of the city and they're part of this community, and I think they're important. The only reason why we're asking for this is because there are some good people here that we don't want to see leave. That is it. It has nothing to do with anything else. Not to disrespect them, not to disrespect anybody else that works for the city, and not to disrespect our community. We just want to keep the good people that we have here, and we want to get good people to continue to come and work here. That is it.
Well, I think that's everybody's goal. And I meant no disrespect to Pocatello at all. All I'm just saying is that when you're comparing tax bases and the amount of money that goes into the coffers of a city government, Pocatello is unique because such a large portion of property, if you will, that is developed that otherwise would generate a lot of tax money in other communities is not taxed here because that's just the way it's just not taxed. That's just a fact.
But this department at one point was above the market.
Well, I'm not
so with that same exact restriction in place, and so
not as many employees.
Right, but
So a little bit different, and really what he's saying is true, and that's brought to us at budget time, and when you're looking at where does that money come from? Because that's what we're all looking for, right? Where do we find the money? Well, the money's not coming in. We're getting about 60% in taxes. You look at Chubbuck's getting 80-some%, 87, right? 80% it comes in, so it makes a difference. Now, across the board, you got to look at it. How does the city do business? Is it just the police department, or is it the city as a whole? What do we change? What do we fix? How do you generate more money? What services do we provide? What services do we quit providing? It's bigger than just here. I'm telling you, right? It's bigger than just the police department.
Okay.
We are a full-service police department, so those are the things you look at. What services do you not want to have anymore?
All right.
I'll echo what Akila said. The fact remains the same. We've lost people. We're going to continue to lose people, and we cannot attract people.
I mean, these guys are anticipating a reduction in force of 10 to 15% based on this negotiation. If they don't get a reasonable raise in pay, 10 to 15% of the current force has said, I'm done if they don't do it this time. I mean, it'll cost millions of dollars to the city just losing those people. And so, they're in here negotiating, feeling like their backs are against the wall.
Sure.
That they're going to lose people. I mean, they're going to. Yesterday when we finished and all those people stand out there were people who said, I can't stay here anymore if this doesn't go well.
Understandable.
We're fighting for our people. We're fighting for ourselves. Fighting for the city, really.
So we're probably, as far as we're going to get today, I guess I'll just look for an email from Heather proposing new dates to sit down. Once you guys feel like you have your head around what those fundamental changes.
So is that what you want? You want to look at a reorganization
We want to look at
of the department? But I guess part of that is
Well, we're not asking for that. What we've been told is that that's what has to happen in order for the pay increase to go. And so what we want to do is see, okay, what are the changes? Let's look.
And again, that was what was said.
Right.
That was not proposed on our
well,
side.
and the only reason those things are said
We're acting in good
is
faith that the 15% you brought us is really what you're looking for. We're not trying to be dismissive
No,
of
that's
that
fine.
number. That's why we're asking there.
Right.
We're not saying, we're not denying that
No,
we're
I'm
going to
just talking about
counter.
the heated rhetoric responding to us asking for clarification on the
Rhetoric's a
job.
bit of a strong word.
Yeah, yes, it was. So,
I guess we're done today.
I mean, they're just saying that because this is live streamed and they don't want,
I think
they
we're
don't
done
want
for
members
today,
to
yeah.
think that.
Real quick, do we have that TIF number from Joyce?
We don't have the general fund amount yet. Do you want me to email it? Can I email that?
Do we need to get it on record,
Or I
or,
can bring it to the next meeting?
I mean, do you have, what do you have?
She is, let me see what she has.
We'll get the best information we have at the next meeting because it'll
Yeah.
go within if it raises or lowers the maximum amount, that'll go within our analysis that will be part of the basis of any counter offer that we make. So we'll provide that when we provide our offer.
very
Yeah,
good.
she's trying to work on it right now. So I'm
I don't want to put any
sorry.
stress on
Thank
it,
you.
so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.